minute. So our first order of business, of course, is to adopt the agenda. So can I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Gus, seconded by Michael. All those in favor? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none, we move on to item 3, the minutes, confirmation of the minutes of the Heritage Committee meeting December 9th, 2020. Are there any edits, errors, or omissions anybody would like to note from those? Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion to adopt the minutes? Michael? Robert, I'm going to say you seconded that. Is that all right? All those in favor? Okay, motion is carried. No delegations, the unfinished business list. So that'll be over to you, Jennifer.
Yep. All right. So just like last meeting, I'm only going to speak to the sections on the unfinished business list where we have some updates. So the first one would be for the Parkway gates. I did send another email out to our previous contact for MTO to ask about any updates on that. Unfortunately, he has changed jobs. So he is still with MTO, but in a different region. So he is going to be looking into that for us. Hopefully within a week or two, we'll have something back from him. If not, he did send me a new contact. And if I don't hear from him, then I'll give her a shout. So hopefully we'll hear back from that. The plaque program, I did send in the purchase orders. We got the proofs back. So those plaques are being ordered. They are in production now. So that one has been updated. Hopefully the installations can begin once the plaques are made, so 6 to 8 weeks. And again, that is weather dependent. Also, if there's any COVID-19 constrictions with that as well. All right, and grant guidelines. So it's been a while, but we last December, there were some edits that certain members wanted to be made to the grant guidelines document, as well as the heritage permit application. So I did get in touch with those members who formed the subcommittee, and we did some edits to that. So I'm bringing that to this meeting. It will be our second report, so 7.2, after our permit for the Lara Cake Hall. And that's everything. Any comments or questions?
Any comments or questions for Jennifer, members? All right, thank you, Jennifer. Could I just get a motion to accept Jennifer's report in the unfinished business list? Robert, seconded by Gus. All those in favor? Motion is carried. 6, reporting from council. Is there anything to report, Jennifer?
No, not from council.
Okay, on to item number 7, 7.1. Heritage permit application for the assessment of the Lara Cake Hall.
All right, so this submission, it's from Dave Thompson, who's here with us today. He will talk a little bit more about the work that's being done. This permit is to undertake further assessment of work that may need to be done. It's not to do work and finish work on the Lara Cake Hall, as we don't have the funding from the grant that has been applied to. So this is to continue with the assessment. Another item that did pop up, so Andre Scheinman, I hope I'm saying that right, he is a heritage conservation consultant, and he's been hired by Loyalist Township to help with the assessment and the work. He did mention that an archaeological assessment might need to be made when the work is being done, or before rather. So that is something that we might have to think about. But Dave, if you'd like to take over. Oh, sorry, Dave, you have to unmute.
Computers to my so I'm in a panic. Thanks, Jennifer. And I'm just going to repeat a little bit of what you just said there. I envision that the township will be asking for 2 permits this year. The first one is what we're here to talk about today, and that's for further inspection. And the second one will be to do whatever work that funding's available for. And we believe that the grant program that I was involved with to submit the grant just before Christmas is sufficient to do a lot of the work that's required on Layer Cake Hall. That's the good news, but the bad news is there's some work to be done, and that's what I'm here to talk about. So most of you know me with my Director of Engineering hat on. That hat's evolved a year or so ago, and now I'm delegated, relegated, whatever you want to use the word, to what's called special projects of sorts. And things like Main Street, Bath, and Layer Cake Hall fall on my plate here. So with that in mind, I think I've met most of you before. I'm going to run through a bunch of stuff fast and then maybe answer some questions at the end if that's okay, and then cover most of the stuff. So again, my most recent involvement with Layer Cake Hall started with a panic phone call saying, can you help with this grant? And that was in early November, with a grant being required to be submitted in early December. And part of that, I guess there's 2 parts for me. Was one, to understand what the grant was asking for, and then once that was done, figure out what was a suitable candidate for it. And this specific one allowed for buildings like Layer Cake Hall, special uses to be considered. And with that in mind, I dug into the literature review. I'm not sure who, but somebody put me in contact with Gus, and Gus brought Ron Tasker aboard, and we met, walked through the building. Gus brought his ladder so we could go up and look in the attic. Gave kind of an overview. We had quick procurement for somebody with a heritage background to help us put the grant together. We needed a budget, and there was nobody on the township staff that really knew the value of the type of work to be done. So that's why we needed somebody with that background. And also, I guess, the credentials add some credibility when needed when some of these recommendations come through. So we were fortunate that we were able to get somebody of Andre Scheinman's caliber who was available, because it's extremely short. Like, essentially we hired him, and a week and a half later he had to deliver his first report. So, you know, he was there within hours, and we walked through the building, and he had his jackknife and flashlights and ladders and things, and he had a good walk around the exterior, poking. I didn't spend the whole day with him, but I read his initial work, and he certainly was quite thorough in what he looked at. So that being said, we took his draft report and submitted the grant. And when we did that, we knew at the time, based on what we'd seen and the information that had been recorded in the past, that we needed to get a better look at the structural work. And I'll just highlight some of the things. Most of you probably already know this, but if you stand outside the building, you look at that south wall, and you look over the window, there's a pretty serious deflection around that window. And similarly, I hadn't seen it before until I was right out there with Andre, but if you're standing on the north side of the building where the window sticks out, there's almost like a twist, a rotational twist to the wall. That's not healthy looking, put it that way. Now, again, some of it may be old age. Some of you guys might think I'm starting to twist a little bit too, but It may be just old age. It may be something more than that. It's got pretty unique structure inside, at least from my perspective, in that it looks as if the internal elements of the building, the structural elements, are separate from the outside of the building. And that's, I wouldn't say that's good or bad, but it's different. But when you look at the bow in the building, it's a little bit concerned because you don't have those ties that tie the one side to the other side that, you know, modern construction would normally have. So another concern with the structure is the fact that the current cladding, board and batten cladding, is sitting right on that concrete little ring that's at foundation level. And if you look closely at it, you'll see that there's water sitting on a lot of that concrete, and a lot of that wood has been damp for a long time. And if you poke a jackknife or anything into it, it sinks in quite a bit. So there's a concern that if there's any timbers lying on directly on that concrete surface, they may be in big damage, you know, from lying there for, I think the work was done in 1980. So, you know, that's 40 years. If it's sitting there, it could be in bad shape, or almost, I said 1980, be in the early 80s, whatever it was. So with the interior of that building, all, I call it commercial finish, but, you know, with the drywall and being used at the library, going in there and starting to do removals. We already have a report that says there's asbestos in the joint compound. So all of this stuff needs some special precautions for any work inside there. It's not very practical. And with Andre's background, he suggested the best thing to do is to go in with the assistance of a structural engineer and look at, let's call it the critical components of the structure, and some typical critical and or typical locations. Peel back the cladding, see what's there in terms of condition, what fasteners were used. You know, is the timber continuous from foundation to roof, or is it segmented, and get a sense of that, and then do a proper structural evaluation on that. So in the last week or so, we've firmed up the structural engineer that we're going to be employing for the project. And we're basically just waiting for both the permitting process and COVID restrictions to allow us to do that. Again, when we submitted the grant, we knew we had to do some more structural work. We weren't, you know, we had as many questions once we got through it than we did answers, sort of thing. So that work was planned. In addition to that work, when we're putting the permit application together, it was suggested that we should probably expose the foundation wall and just see what the actual details of that concrete, I'm gonna call it a concrete sill. I don't really know what it is, but I'll use that terminology just for the sake of it for this discussion. We don't really know how that concrete sill sits on the stone wall and how that respects, or how it relates to the timber. So we'd like, the structural engineer would like to see that. And the fact that it's a heritage site with a cultural heritage easement on it, it was then suggested that, you know, for that reason, we should also involve the Ontario Heritage Trust and make sure they're aware of what we're doing, get some guidance on that. So a similar application has gone off in their direction a couple of weeks ago to make sure they're aware of what we're up to. We're hoping that we can do this work towards the end of February, but you know, there's a lot of outstanding things here yet in terms of COVID and everything else. So, but that's a rough time frame. Those are the things that are going to have sort of the most action on the site, that are going to be visible. In terms of when we're all done, the intent is that any cladding that's removed, if it's salvageable, it would go back on. But in truthfulness, when you look at condition of some of that lower cladding, if you take it off, I doubt there's going to be anything left to put back, and it's going to need some temporary patches. So the idea is it would be temporary patch when we do this inspection now. If we get the grant, then there's a full repair slated for it with the grant project. If we don't get a grant, then we're going to have to come back and do some individual repairs in those spots and maybe pick up some others while we're there. And that'll have to be prioritized with the final recommendations. But in short, the intent is to bring everything back essentially to look, I don't want to say make it look as it is, because it looks pretty rough right now, but to match the existing construction. Maybe that's the best way to say it. And hopefully we get the funding in place that can properly paint it and dress it up to its former stature, sort of thing. So I think I've just about covered that. The one thing that once Mr. Scheinman has completed this next field work, it's the intent to bring the full report back to this committee and walk through it. With our fingers crossed, we get the grant and the project would be, there's not a timing provided to when the grant would be announced, but they do tell us that they want it done this year, sort of thing. So it's a combination provincial, federal funding program. It's ideal for the township because there's no township funding required other than our internal staff time, sort of thing, to administer the process. So with that, I got through it fast, but I was told I had 5 minutes. I've probably been a little more. Any questions?
Jennifer, I have a question. Do I need to type it?
No, you can go ahead and ask it, Barb.
Oh, okay. Because
Yep.
my cat just got ready to type. Yeah, David, wherever you went, this is Barb Snyder. I'm out in Amherst View.
Yeah, hi, Barb.
Yeah, hi. What was the grant program that you applied for? Is this that shovel-ready program that the National Trust was talking about?
I'm not sure on that end. Just bear with me half a second. I'll get you the proper name here.
Yeah, just I'm curious.
I just have to. I'll never get it when I'm in a hurry.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, maybe somebody can look that up for later. But, I mean, just in the case that there was more than one possible grant program and you weren't using that shovel-ready one that I got a while ago, several emails from the National Trust, you know, there might be other programs to help with this work.
This is called the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, and that's kind of a big banner, and underneath it there's at least 5 other projects that the township has participated in, and this one's called the COVID Relief Intake. So it's a set amount. There's approximately, it's slightly less than $90,000 is the amount that's been here. No, sorry, a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
In that range, so is what's been earmarked for the township.
Oh, that's great. Okay,
so
well
it would make a good dent.
Yes, it would. Yeah.
Gus, you had a
Next
question?
question is from Gus. Yep.
Hi, David.
Hi, Gus.
I want to put the motion on the floor right now to go ahead and allow, or recommend, sorry, to council that they approve the application. It's been many years that this poor site has been suffering a form of demolition by neglect. So I make that motion. I just note, I think one of the emails I sent to you had noted that in the 80s, the south wall was supposed to be monitored by a device to see if the deflection would increase or not. To my knowledge, there's no records to indicate if that occurred or not, but maybe the trust might have reports that may have indicated if there was movement or not.
Am I still on here?
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I actually just read that report again, Gus, before or after lunch anyway. And it's very clear, that recommendation. I have not seen any follow-up to that anywhere. That being said, in both the occasion when I was out there with you and Ron, and when I went back with Andre afterwards, even more so with Andre, I've looked at all that drywall all around that window, and I don't see any cracks at all, which is good. There is a little bit on the north side, but I'll just say it's a crack. It's not it's not a crack that causes any concern or movement, but I fully expected to see something that looked like it would move over time or seasonally or something like that, and there's not any evidence at all around that I could see anyway. And Andre and I both looked at it. Nevertheless, from I have a concern with it, and until proven otherwise, I'd like to see how that thing's tied together and not still rolling apart, sort of thing.
Okay, thank you, David.
Just before I accept Gus's motion, just for procedural order, if there's anybody else that has any questions for Dave with respect to his presentation, can ask that now. Okay, seeing none, then I'll accept the motion from Gus, which is to adopt the recommendation. Just for clarity, the recommendation is that the report from Economic Growth and Community Development Services, January 26, 2021, re-heritage permit application for the assessment of the Layer Cake Hall be received, and that the heritage permit application for the Layer Cake Hall, 193 Davie Street, Bath, be recommended to council for approval, with the condition that approval be obtained from the Ontario Heritage Trust. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Michael? Any comments from the mover and seconder? Anybody else? Okay, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Excellent. Okay, next up on the agenda, 7.2.
All right, so as I had mentioned earlier in the meeting with the unfinished business list, we brought the grant guidelines document as well as the heritage permit application in for final review from the Heritage Committee. We did make several updates to it. On the report, it is a large report. There are 4 attachments to it. The very first 2 attachments are for the current property grant guidelines and the heritage permit application that are currently in use. The last 2 attachments are for the updated versions that the subcommittee and I have been working on. I added the documents that are currently in use for those members who may have not seen it for a while, so they can take a look and see what the changes are and can see the difference. But while you guys were looking at the agenda, was there any changes? I know Mike had made another comment just to kind of switch a paragraph around and add one to the front page and take a couple off from page 7. But for everyone else, was there any other comments for changes that you'd like to be added or would like to see on the updated documents? I'm seeing heads shaking. All right, so those changes that Mike, you had emailed yesterday, I can make those changes before they are put through. Barb, was there any other changes?
I don't think so, although I have to say, I was wondering in our list of types of jobs, considering what we've just learned about the approach to Layer Cake Hall, I wondered if we should slide in there something about investigative investigation of the building or something, since it just struck me as something. Otherwise, will have to be put under other, but it would be, it would neither be. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. It's just a thought.
Any more comments for the permit application? So for the recommendation that I put through for the report, I separated the permit application from the grant guidelines. So Barb, your comment was for the grant guidelines. Should we hold off on pushing that through?
That comment was actually for the permit.
The permit?
That section where we had that checklist of this project will be of thus and so nature.
Okay.
It's really not necessary. It's just reading through the Layer Cake Hall material and listening to Dave, I thought, well, this is sort of a different category, this exploration or investigation of condition, which do we accommodate it or do we just let it become other? Please describe.
Any comments on that? Oh, we lost Robert. Should we add an extra section for that or just have it put under? Oh, Gus?
Gus?
There we go. You raise a very good point there, Barb, and I think a box there so people understand that there's a possibility. We do make reference about funding available for engineering and architecture, and some cases they may very well have to do exploratory work or investigations. So I think a tick box there to that effect would be good because it indicates to the property owner that that is an option, and it could be a very expensive option that funding would be very helpful for.
Right, good.
And should I add something that speaks to that in the grant guidelines as well, just so that they know? Like as an extra?
Without rereading all of that, I'm not going to do right now, but do we not suggest that, as Gus mentioned, we do suggest that there is possible funding for architectural engineering study?
I believe there is on the grant guidelines, professional fees.
Right, so that would
be under that. Okay. So I can just add that to the permit. Are there any other other comments or changes to the permit that you can think of? No? All right, so I can make those changes. I can add a section for exploratory work on the permit, as well as make those changes that Mike had discussed on the email he sent today, or yesterday rather, sorry. Other than those changes, are we good to push it through to council? Have them take a look at it? Yeah, okay,
No,
perfect.
I see
Oh,
Gus
Gus.
has his hand up again.
my only concern is before pushing it forward to council, I would like to have a resolution on council's hearing our recommendation again about plaques and grants.
So we are sending a report in that is separate. These minutes will go into that report and we will have a section that speaks to that.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
So is that it for your report, Jennifer?
That is.
Okay. So if there's no further questions, could I get a motion then on the report and the recommendation, of which there are two? Gus, do you move both recommendations, Gus? Yeah. Okay. Can I have a seconder? Robert? Perfect. Any comments from the mover or seconder? Anybody else? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Okay. Item 7.3,
All right.
monthly update.
So here are the highlights for the last month and a half since we last met. So I've been preparing reports, and that would include the council report going, or the report going to council in a week. So that will bring forward the recommendation to have the plaques become part of the grants to be eligible to apply for a grant. To bring that back with the explanations that we discussed on December 9th. Held a couple meetings with the subcommittee. Also had several meetings with Barb. We were discussing the condition evaluation for property forms. So I've been working on that with her this past month and a bit, a little before Christmas as well. So correspondence. March 3rd, it's going back a ways, but there was an inquiry on whether we could arrange a meeting between the Ontario Heritage Trust and our committee members to discuss specifically how the OHT enforces their easement agreements with designated property owners. So I got in touch with the easement program officer, and she is willing to meet with us as long as it's during a work day and during work hours through a platform like Zoom. So we can arrange a meeting that works with everyone, and we can discuss that if you are all still interested in that. Yeah, all right. I was also in contact with Goreway. That was finalizing the purchases. So that has gone through. And also in contact with Ryan from MTO. And that's everything.
All right, can I just get a motion to receive the monthly update from Jennifer? Michael, seconded by Robert. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Perfect. Announcements and inquiries. Any announcements or inquiries from members?
Well, I have an inquiry.
Yes, Barb.
How do we get Andre Scheinman to come to look at a deteriorating north foundation wall at Fairfield House? How do we get, some real professional scrutiny of conditions there? That's my inquiry.
That is a technical inquiry that I am happy to pass on to more technical staff.
Perfect. I appreciate that very much. I
Maybe,
can send them photographs.
maybe Jennifer can field that.
Yeah, I can send that on.
Any other announcements or inquiries?
I do have an announcement. I'm not sure if everybody is aware, but Andrea Cross did send in her resignation a couple of weeks ago from the Heritage Committee, so she will no longer be joining us.
Thank you, Jennifer. That preempts my announcement, which is to say that I wanted to acknowledge Andrea's service, the long service of Andrea Cross, a member of this committee who recently submitted her resignation, as Jennifer said. So I just wanted it entered into the record that on behalf of this committee and of Loyalist Township, we extend our sincere thanks to Andrea and wish her the very best in her future endeavors.
If we ever get together again in the same room, we should circulate a thank you card and sign it and get something personal back to her for her many years.
Very much agreed, Barb. Yes, for sure. Andrea has an announcement.
Thanks. No, it was just to add on to that. There is a formal thank you going out from the township to Andrea, so that is being done. But definitely as an aside, with the more personal touch with the committee and all the staff that work closely with her over the years, I think is a really good idea too. Yeah.
Okay, before we adjourn, are we wanting to discuss upcoming meeting dates, Jennifer, or are we going to deal with that at a later point?
I think we'll deal with that at a later point.
Okay, very well. Okay, then I'll call for a motion for adjournment. Michael, I'll take that from you. And Gus, I'll take you as a seconder. All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried. We are adjourned. Thanks very much, folks. See you next time.
Thanks.
So long.
Bye, Barb.